Art Blakey is my name. I just believe in this. I believe in this music. This is my life. Dun, 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 dun. Get together, come to bandstand and play. No malice. Whatever malice you have, leave it out there. Because a bandstand is the only place I got to go in this world. I'm telling you, if I don't get there, boy, I'm dead.
Art Blakey was an innovator of modern jazz drumming with an extensive resume. He performed with some of the greatest jazz musicians of all time, like Miles Davis, Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie, and Thelonious Monk. But most importantly, Art Blakey was the leader of the Jazz Messengers, a group which he recorded nearly 70 albums with. He had showmanship, an aggressive swing style, and he was known for his explosive drum solos. Join us as we dive into the genius of Art Blakey. Art Blakey may be best known for his powerful and thunderous sound behind the drums. Either as a band leader or a sideman, he was always leading the band and pushing them to new creative and sonic possibilities. As described in the jazz documentary by Ken Burns, Art exudes power and originality, creating a dark cymbal sound punctuated by frequent loud snare and bass drum accents in triplets or cross rhythms. This power is something that made him famous in his emerging years. These punctuations can be seen in Art's heavy-handed unison triplet fills, one of the grooves Art was most famous for was his jazz shuffle, and he had a bunch of different variations that he used on many different recordings.
Art Blakey's beat was oh, man, you should have us together, man.
Man, you the only one I know ever got Art to play shuffle like that.
Oh, boy, you can hit it, brother.
I know you can.
Oh.
And one of the best examples is from Art's most famous tune called Moanin'. When playing these shuffles, Art would sometimes play dead strokes on the snare where he would take his drumstick and he would bury it into the drumhead. The tune Moanin' actually started out as something Art's piano player at the time, Bobby Timmons, would play when the band was taking a break.
Good fortune came to us through Bobby Timmons. What he used to do between the numbers, he would play this thing, just 8 bars, and laugh. He said, that sure is funky. And that 8 bar was dun da 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 dun da 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 da.
Art would sometimes use a very heavy quarter note accent pattern during his shuffles as well. Regardless of how he played it, it always sounded thunderous and it drove the band for the entire set. So before we move on, I just want to take a second and let you know that we have some amazing jazz courses available inside of Drumeo from jazz legends like Steve Smith, Billy Cobham, and Peter Erskine. If you've ever wanted to develop your jazz playing, I highly recommend checking these out. You can click the link right here on screen, or there's a link right below this video in the description, and you can get a 7-day free trial to Drumeo. And with that, let's move on and talk about Art's technical ability behind the kit.
The thing that always amazed us musicians, but especially the drummers, about Art Blakey's playing was that he had mastered what has become advanced drumming techniques years before it became popular and years before people like Chapin published advanced drumming technique books.
As you heard Max Roach describe in that clip, Art wasn't only a commanding and powerful drummer, but he also had incredible technical abilities around the kit. One of Art's go-to comping licks is now called the Blakey triplet, and that's where you play the last 2 triplet partials of each beat and accent the 3rd triplet partial. You can hear this in the opening of the tune, The Egyptian. Art would then move this idea around the kit, playing the triplets as cross sticks. Art's technical and polyrhythmic capabilities also came through in his comping. He would use huge cymbal punctuations to create hemiolas in up-tempo numbers like the song A Night in Tunisia. And various triplet subdivisions to create layers of polyrhythms. According to Max Roach, Art was perhaps the best at maintaining independence with all four limbs, and he was doing it before anybody was. Art had one particular triplet comping lick that you would hear on many different recordings. Here's a couple of examples. And of course, we can't forget about Art's incredible press rolls. And he would use these often to launch into heavier sections of songs. And probably the most famous example is from the song Moanin'. And lastly, Art Blakey was a master of incorporating rudiments into his playing. The double paradiddle was one of his favorites. Art Blakey made a name for himself with his unique and creative way of approaching the drum kit as a musical instrument. Listen to Max Roach describe some of the interesting techniques that Art was playing around with in his early career.
And using compound triplets with, say, the left foot while playing 4 with the right hand, and literally rolling on the bass drum at the same time and dragging the left hand to create a sound that was still right in time.
The tune Three Blind Mice is a great example of this, as we hear Art playing fills using his elbow on the drums, a press roll, and some rudiments all in one single phrase. Art brought this same kind of creativity to his grooves as well, and he was a master at playing these Latin-inspired grooves that you hear on so many of his famous recordings. Listen to this swung version of a bossa nova, which you don't hear played all that often. Or on the tune Sortie, where Art starts playing a straight-ahead swing feel, and out of nowhere he morphs into a 6/8 Afro-Cuban feel. Right now, let's look at two of Art's most famous examples of Afro-Cuban influenced grooves. The first is from the song Caravan. You can also practice this one with a bass drum played on beat 1 or on beats 1 and 3. And the second example is from one of my personal favorite tracks, A Night in Tunisia. One of the coolest parts about this track is all of the percussion that you hear in it, and Art actually taught all the other musicians in the band to play these parts so that they could be featured in these sections.
In the band in '59, he used to play this thing. He would get everybody into the 6/8 field, and then he would play a 4 on top of it. He'd play this thing, ding, 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 on the cymbal. And that would just take it somewhere else.
Anything else, you get in the way. I keep telling you to play, play it. Good. Down, bum, bum, boom, bum, boom, boom, boom. Bum, bing, bum, bing, hey, hey, Art understood that music because it was so African-oriented. It was probably in a little thing in the back of his head right up in here somewhere, and it made him react to it immediately. If I'd come in with
He made it his own.
So if you've tried any of these grooves for yourself, you'll know that these aren't easy to play. So we've got you covered over at Drumeo. All of these parts are transcribed. You can slow them down, you can loop different sections, and trust me, speaking from personal experience, they're a huge help. So if you want to check that out, there's a link right below this video, and you can get a 7-day free trial to Drumeo. With that, let's move on and let's look at some of Art's famous drum solos. His commanding sound, showmanship, and technical ability were all put on display when Art would play a drum solo. Many of Art's go-to licks were either based on hemiolas or rudiments. And according to his longtime friend and road manager, John Ramsey, Art had a favorite hemiola lick that he used to start many of his drum solos. This lick creates a 3/4 hemiola and sounds like this when slowed down. And he would even use this in different subdivisions such as eighth notes when playing in more up-tempo settings. And to take this even further, Art could then expand on this hemiola grouping to come up with some very interesting solo ideas, like this next example from the song Up Jumped Spring. Another common technique Art Blakey would use in his solos was the double stroke roll, and he would often play these on the toms. Check out how Art alternates between double stroke accents and more syncopated accents in the tune Arabia. Sometimes he would morph these double strokes into quarter note triplets as well to make for some very exciting polyrhythmic possibilities. And for any of you who have seen any live clips of Art Blakey playing, you know that he was an incredible showman, and he would often use these crossover licks on the toms, like in this next clip. A concept that's been used in the jazz tradition since the very beginning is something called call and response. And this is something Art would apply into his drum solos, particularly with the hands and the feet. And of course, we can't forget about Art Blakey's speed behind the kit. This next one really showcases how fast his right foot was.
want you all to get together, you come to the bandstand and play. No malice. Whatever malice you have, leave it out there. Because the bandstand is the only place I got to go in this world. I'm telling you, if I don't get there, boy, I'm dead.
Perhaps his most meaningful and lasting contribution to the jazz world is the lengthy roster of musicians who spent their time in the Jazz Messengers, many of whom went on to become legends in the jazz world in their own right. Musicians like Wynton Marsalis, Lee Morgan, Freddie Hubbard, Hank Mobley, Wayne Shorter, Horace Silver, and so many more all spent their time in the Jazz Messengers, which was later deemed the Hard Bop Academy.
It's his debut as a leader.
Oh, you mean with the Jazz Messengers?
Yeah,
with Hank and Horace.
Yeah, so he had some beautiful musicians.
So I came down there and all the brothers was down there playing and stuff. And we came up and boo, you know, boo ass. What you want to play, man? Man, I feel fortunate to have met Boo up here because I know if I wouldn't have played with him, I wouldn't have even played jazz.
Art Blakey showed young musicians everything from finding their voice in the jazz world to reading an audience when playing live and simply playing with a great sound.
The amazing thing about playing with Art is that he has a way of tuning into inspiration that can draw an emotion out of you that you may have never experienced before.
You know, if the audience seemed a little restless, if they didn't, maybe we were playing a bunch of new tunes that they didn't know, wham, he would go into Blues March or Moanin' and, you know, something that everybody knew.
You know, there's a little saying he would say, it's like, you don't want to be a silent movie trumpet player. You know, in other words, that one you can't hear. That's such a great way of expressing it.
Art led young musicians into the jazz scene for the entirety of his storied career. He would often encourage the members of the Jazz Messengers to bring in their own tunes as a way to get them recorded and grant them more exposure in the scene.
We as Americans and older Americans and senior citizens, I think that we should hand down our knowledge and our wisdom to the younger people, and so that they can go on and take it further.
All of these traits of both Art and the Jazz Messengers really allowed so many incredible musicians to cut their teeth under the guidance of a master.
The foundation of this art form, this is a democratic music that was developed through the interaction of personalities and musicians on the bandstand.
All right, there you have it, the genius of Art Blakey. Hopefully you enjoyed this detailed look into Art's playing and learned something along the way that you didn't know before. Now, before you go, make sure you leave a comment below this video and let me know one thing that you've learned from listening to Art Blakey. And if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and hit those like and subscribe buttons along with that notification bell so you're fully up to date with everything happening here on the Drumeo channel. And if you want to check out some other episodes in the Genius Of series, I've filmed some other features on drummers like Elvin Jones, Neil Peart, Danny Carey, Phil Collins, and many other drummers. With that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Cheers.